Do you believe that Putin's departure from life or from power is a necessary condition for ending the war in Ukraine? Or is it that no one can force Russia to change course anymore, since there is a demand from Russian society itself for this so-called victory? Whether it's a victory over the Banderites or over NATO, is that demand simply too strong? And at this point, Putin no longer decides anything.
Take a close look. All of this is nothing more than hypnotic propaganda. For them, because how is it possible that you fail to see the poverty and devastation they themselves are living in, and yet talk about some absolutely distant concepts that mean nothing to them? In general, it's just the jumble of letters to them. That's why this is done deliberately, simply to distract from what used to be called a diversion of attention to an unworthy object. And of course, so that they think less about why everything is getting more expensive, why they're barely making ends meet, and most importantly, why they live in such utter devastation. So, if the specific question is being posed as exactly how one might go about removing him from his position of power, assuming for a moment that he stays alive throughout the process, you see, this truly presents us with quite a significant and complex dilemma. Because in order to remove him from power, it seems that it would have to happen feet first. Because I just don't see any other way to pry him out of there. But the fundamental question remains. After all, looking at the examples of Gaddafi or Maduro, it clearly means that absolutely nothing is impossible. It is just that after a completely successful and precise strike on the secret bunker where he was hiding, he simply soiled himself and turned into a verb right there. That is exactly what happened in that moment. There are ready-made scenarios. As for their elite, they are confused. Unlike those who are completely brainwashed, probably. But again, you see, just as they were brainwashed in one direction, if there was a will, they could start brainwashing them in another, or a third, or a fourth direction, or maybe even stop brainwashing them altogether. But as for the so-called elite, I think we will actually make them an offer. This so-called elite, because that's actually an oxymoron. Elite in Russian is an oxymoron, you see. It's like a bald brunette, a living corpse. So, what is conventionally called by that word? They have been offered these options. Look, for example, at the case in Venezuela, and look at the case in Iran. So, there should be no doubt that there will be enough lampposts for everyone. There shouldn't be any doubt about that anywhere. So, for them, this dilemma is actually quite pressing. And I can solemnly assure you, this deep-seated confusion and chaotic turmoil in their minds, if the word mind even applies here, because it's pure madness, but even in this madness, there are still opportunists, conformists, careerists, and any others you might care to name, or even just simple cynics. Let us take a moment to call things by their actual proper names. Even if they are deeply immoral and opportunistic cynics, they still try to adapt to what is currently happening with the absolute minimum amount of potential harm to themselves. So right now, there are various different options and pathways available to choose from. So the fundamental question is, will this happen through an overthrow from within? In other words, some kind of coup, or in the end, will it look like natural causes? Well, roughly like what happened with Stalin, when you could say he choked in the puddle of his own urine. It's a difficult question, but the fact is, it's obvious to them that he is a deadweight and will drag down all his appointees with him, not to mention those who keep either falling out of windows or, well, shooting themselves in the head several times. All sorts of things happen. All of this, of course, creates tension. But again, we're now discussing things that are hard for us to influence. Is something supposed to happen? Some event, let's call it a black swan or something like that. That would, of course, be an unfortunate and inevitable outcome, and then we could only deeply regret that it had not come to pass much sooner. But still, we need to rely on our own strength and think about how to bring this ending closer.
The question is short, but difficult. In your opinion, when will it end? This unjust war?
From my personal perspective, due to a significant variety of complex reasons and factors, we are now standing directly on the very threshold of what is a very possible ending. And in principle, I think that, Well, right now, we are, of course, all in this wild, constant state of stress. Obviously, we have to carefully select the specific time when we can record, because our electricity is strictly limited to a specific schedule. That's in the places where it's currently still accessible and available. And there are many people who are sitting without electricity for many consecutive days and nights without relief. Little children, elderly people, and elevators not working in high-rise buildings. So, of course, what I just described is the situation in the rear. But what are our soldiers feeling? What are the heroes of the armed forces of Ukraine feeling? Who in the world could have possibly imagined that they would be facing these cold winter freezes for the fourth time? For the fourth time now, do you truly understand what I am saying? When it all just started, the full-scale invasion. Of course, everyone was afraid of that first winter, but each subsequent winter is getting harder and harder. Therefore, for a wide variety of significant and compelling reasons, I firmly believe that the recent public statements and words delivered by President Aliyev on this specific topic are quite significant and worthy of our attention. Interesting. And they are something we should give our most serious attention to. He spoke at great length regarding how long he patiently waited and persevered before he achieved his long-held and cherished goal. So the key point to understand here is not that Ukraine is abandoning any of its goals, but rather the question of carefully weighing the potential risks against its national interests. These are already colossal burdens, unbearable ones. You see, I witness everything with my own eyes now. There is no need to explain. I can see how hard it is for people. And probably we need to look for ways. Some more unconventional ones to think about what else can be done. It is entirely possible to achieve the desired result, but at the same time, fully capitalize on the unique opportunity that President Trump is offering, because he truly and deeply desires this outcome, and he really wants to bring this conflict to a final conclusion. And right now, at this stage, it seems to me that we need to. In the end, think about accumulating strength, including building up our economic capabilities, increasing our potential. I'm a libertarian, so of course I'm far from thrilled about such approaches as restrictive and stifling government regulations and norms. There are new ones that they're currently trying to introduce, deliberately making daily life as challenging and difficult as possible for individual sole proprietors and small business owners. I'm a firm supporter of the free market, and I truly believe Ukraine was specifically made for this. Ukrainians are born libertarians by nature. It's in the blood of Ukrainians. If you like, just look at historical Kiev, the Silk Road, the fairs. There was always trade, and it was always very successful. Just give Ukrainians the opportunity, but without all these restrictive, inspecting authorities. They'll get things organized for you, and generators will be delivered. Not so long ago, we witnessed how all of this was resolved. Instantly, as soon as entrepreneurs and private business owners got involved. When there was no gasoline, when there was a crisis at a certain point, they sorted everything out in the shortest possible time as well. Now, of course, we think of the Second Amendment to the American Constitution, the right to bear arms freely. When it was necessary for everyone to defend their land, their home directly, weapons were distributed, and then, for some reason, they were collected back. There is the initiative proposed by Uchaikin, for example. Why not grant responsible and law-abiding, fully grown and developed, mature people the completely natural right to defend themselves?